today on Getting Into PC Gaming, I'm going to be answering your question of what is inside of a computer. Now, you will probably already know a lot of this stuff in the beginning of the video, but I encourage you to stick till the end where we get really in-depth with the internals of the computer and how they work. Alright, so let's take a look at the computer from the outside. This is the power button. Of course, it's used to power the PC, but do not power it off with this. It can harm your computer. These are the USB ports. They are found in the front and back of most computers. The ones with the gray inside are USB 2.0. Use these to plug in less complex devices such as keyboards, phones, and anything that doesn't process any complex data. The ones on the blue inside are USB 3.0, which are more commonly used for mice, microphones, cameras, and other such devices that have complex data being transferred. Next, we have the headphone jack, and sometimes a microphone jack. Now, I say sometimes because USB-based microphones are becoming more and more common, so much so that some computer manufacturers don't even include them in their products. Next, we have the two lights down at the bottom. The blue light indicates the power state of the PC. When this light is on, the computer is powered on, and when it's off, the computer is powered off. The orange light or yellow light is the hard drive activity light, which is used to indicate if data is being transferred or accessed on the hard drive, which we will cover more in depth later in the video. Now let's take a journey to the back of the computer. Usually located at the top is the power supply. This is where the computer stores and distributes power to all the components within the computer. This is also where your computer plugs into the wall. Sometimes it has a switch on it, but do not use this to power off the computer. Only use it in extreme situations, because it does not save anything that you have open on your computer and may harm it. Under that, there is a vertical metal plate called the I/O shield. Located on the top of the I/O shield are the purple keyboard plug and aqua-colored mouse plug. Now, these are not very popular anymore. Your computer might not even have them, but if you do have an old-fashioned mouse or keyboard, plug away. Next, we have some more USB ports and an Ethernet port. Now, for you young'uns that aren't aware, before Wi-Fi you had to plug your computer into the internet. The Ethernet port is great. I personally use this day to day because it's worlds faster than Wi-Fi. But then again, having a wire running from your computer to your internet is sometimes a hassle. In my case, I had to drill a hole into my floor to access it, but for anyone who needs the better speeds, it's a must-have. Under that, there are some audio ports, which you will probably not use unless you have a surround sound setup, in which case I can help you there. Next to the I/O shield is usually a fan. This fan normally is used to push hot air out. If you don't have a fan in there, then it's normally just a grill. Under that, there is the I/O shield of the graphics card. We will cover this in a minute. These are simple video outputs, HDMI, VGA, DisplayPort. Now let's take a look inside of the PC. PCs normally have two removable panels on their side called side panels. Just remove the thumb screws on the back of the computer, and once you remove the side panel, you will probably see a large board with a fan on it. This is the motherboard. Think of it as a subway station of the computer, and the individual parts as stops. Here on the motherboard is where the CPU sits. The CPU, or Central Processing Unit, is used to run the code behind logic, AI, and math. It's the second highest heat-producing component on the computer, so it has its own fan. Here's where the RAM sits. The RAM, or random access memory, is where the computer stores things that need to be accessed quickly. Think of it as a very fast hard drive, but without much space. RAM is also called a volatile memory, meaning that it has to be constantly powered in order to store data. This is why when your power goes out or your PC turns off randomly, you lose all of your unsaved work. Your unsaved work is stored on the RAM and gets erased as soon as the RAM doesn't receive power. This blue slot is called the PCIe slot, and all the ones below it are called PCI slots. The PCIe slot is where the graphics card is plugged into, which we will go into more depth later. The PCI slot is what's called expansion cards, which give your computer extra capabilities such as better sound, faster Ethernet connections, etc. This last tiny slot is called the PCI X1 slot. Who named these things? Capcom? Anyways, this one is used to plug in very fast hard drives called M.2 SSDs, or solid-state drives, which we will cover more in depth later. These ports right here are what's called SATA ports, or Serial Advanced Technology Attachment. These SATA ports get SATA cables plugged into them and are used to transfer data between the motherboard and the hard drive. On the topic of hard drives, let's talk about those for a second. Hard drives are what store data. They do this by using complex magnets where north magnets equals 0s and south magnets equals 1. It's very complicated, so I'm not going to cover it today, but if you're hungry for more info, I'll leave a link to a video explaining the in-depth details on how they work. One thing about hard drives is that they are very slow. Well, relatively speaking. There is another type of hard drive that stores long-term data. These are called SSDs, which we talked about a little bit on our tour of the motherboard, but let's get more in depth. SSDs include lots of what are called NAND chips, which store little amounts of data very quickly. This is why SSDs are so much more expensive than traditional hard drives. Finally, let's talk about the GPU, or Graphics Processing Unit. This is what handles all the graphics on the computer puts on screen. But Luke, I hear you cry, my computer doesn't have a GPU, how does it work? Well, young Padawan, the answer is that most CPUs come with a very low power GPU built in, which, when you have an Intel CPU, is called Intel Integrated Graphics, and for AMD users, it's called Kaveri. back to the GPU. The GPU also has its own fan, sometimes 2 or even 3. This thing can get really hot, if you know what I mean. If you made it to the end of this fantastically long video, give yourself a pat on the back. Seriously, you deserve it. You are now more or less a computer hardware expert. If you like computer hardware, make sure to subscribe, as I'm hoping to turn this into a regular thing. Also, if you learned anything, just hit the like button, and it would be pretty nice and really good if you left a motivational comment, or just leave a hate comment. I'm pretty used to those. Anyways, this was Getting Into PC Gaming. Tune in sometime in the future for the next episode. See ya.